So this past January, I went to Universal Studios Florida for the first time in my life. Well, maybe first time's a bit of a stretch. Technically, I went once when I was a little kid, but I barely remember any of that. I was way too young for any of it to stick, so this is the first time I truly remember. And I gotta say, I was pretty darn impressed. Obviously, going in, I knew a lot of the attractions that get a lot of attention online. Your E.T.s, Spider-Mans, and Monsters Unchained are talked about all the time for how strong their theming is all the way through the experience. But what surprised me is that there's a lot of attractions at Universal Studios Florida that don't get talked about a lot and that I had never heard of before that also have really strong theming throughout all their queues, pre-shows, and general show areas. Now, that being said, once I went on a lot of these rides, it became very clear why they tend to be overlooked. There's a lot of lackluster attractions at Universal Studios, but I think just because a ride is lackluster doesn't mean that its queue should be thrown out and not talked about at all, because some of these are truly fantastic. So that's what we're here to talk about today. I've picked three attractions from Universal Florida, one from each park, that I think tend to be overlooked in the general online discourse, and I wanted to highlight each of their cues and what I love about them. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Here's three attractions at Universal Studios Florida whose cues are better than the rides themselves. For the first attraction on our list, we're going to be heading over to Islands of Adventure for an attraction that I'm sure most people probably forgot about after their first ride through. Doctor Doom's Fearfall is a pretty standard launch tower, one that you can find at most theme parks and boardwalks. However, just because the ride itself is a bit generic doesn't mean that the queue should be forgotten about. Marvel's Superhero Island in general has this very late 90s, early 2000s comic book vibe to it. A lot of bright colors and sharp edges permeate the park, and all of that theming blends right into the queue for the Fearfall itself. There's a lot to appreciate about this queue. I love the dark greens and purples and the mad scientist laboratory feel to the lighting. These Doombots look like they're action figures brought to life-size scale, and you have Doctor Doom's decrees to the people of Latveria on these gray metal plaques. Just so much to love. Probably my favorite flavorful detail about this line is right when you walk in. There's this plaque on the front that says the Latverian Embassy, and something about it just tickles me so much. I don't know what it is, but the idea that while you're standing in this line, while you wait 20 or so minutes to go on this launch tower, you are technically in the fictional country of Latveria, crossing international borders. I don't know, it's just really silly to me. It fits perfectly for the theming of this attraction. Now, all of this on its own is great. This queue does a perfectly fine job establishing the themes and the environment for the Fearfall, but it's not necessarily what I wanted to talk about today. No, the real reason that I feel like this attraction is underappreciated by most theme park goers is because of its pre-show. This pre-show is absolutely fantastic. This is maybe my favorite interpretation of Doctor Doom I've seen on screen in anything I've watched. This pre-show is 10 minutes of original 2D animation dedicated towards talking about the launch tower, and it's split up into four distinct segments. Two segments involve Doctor Doom in Latveria talking about his new weapon that he's designed to take over the world and defeat the Fantastic Four, and the other two segments are dedicated to Latverian cartoon propaganda. I cannot stress enough just how absolutely perfect Doctor Doom is in this. He's played by a voice actor named Freddie Stebbins, and he just does a perfect job establishing the egotistical, over-the-top, hammy supervillain of Doctor Doom. The absolute self-importance on display here is amazing. I'm just so enthralled hearing every last line of his. You are finally receiving piece of the puzzle that will enable me to eliminate my sworn enemies. You just Fantastic Four, once and for all, and assume my rightful place as supreme ruler of the world. To demonstrate just how absolutely over the top Doctor Doom is in this pre-show, I want to go over one of the segments. In this segment, Doctor Doom is talking about his latest invention, the Fearfall, which takes the fear from its riders, harnesses it into fear juice to power a giant laser cannon, which he then plans to fire at the Fantastic Four, and then question mark, profit? In order to demonstrate the power of this laser cannon, he of course goes to his basement with 4 rock statues of the Fantastic Four. In this demonstration, Doom fires a laser at and then, right when he's about to fire his last laser blast at his statue of Reed Richards, the laser cannon, of course, runs out of juice. The level headed and calm Doctor Doom responds to this lack of power with a very reasonable reaction of jumping out of the laser cannon and onto the rock statue of Reed Richards and just starts beating it with his hands, screaming to the top of the skies how much he hates those accursed Fantastic Four. I love this. This is Doctor Doom at his absolute hammiest, and I just can't help but feel absolutely charmed by watching it. I love seeing a supervillain just be so over the top like this. Now, I've spent a lot of time highlighting the Doctor Doom segments of this pre-show, and while they're probably my favorite parts, I did want to highlight the Latverian propaganda segments that are the other 2 parts of the pre-show. These are very much Cold War propaganda parody cartoons. Think of the style of like a Vault Boy from Fallout. They're very fun to watch and very on the nose. Probably my favorite of these 2 segments is this one starring this little Latverian child named Leopold. Just seeing him go to the drop tower and be constantly abused is just so fun to watch. It's very Rubber Hose. I think it might also be Dexter's Lab. I honestly can't really place the cartoon style too well, but whatever it is, I just absolutely love seeing it. It's so fun. This pre-show is so fun, and it's honestly a shame because most people probably won't see the majority of it given how low the lines are at Doctor Doom's Fearfall. On my trip to Universal, I was in Islands of Adventure for 2 days, and while the park got busy both days, I don't think I saw Doctor Doom's Fearfall get above a 25-minute wait for the entire time. I know the first time that I went through the attraction, I absolutely blitzed through the line and only caught a small segment of the pre-show. In fact, after I got off the drop tower, I was so enthralled by the little bit I saw that I immediately got back in line only to watch the pre-show and then immediately left. I got a lot of weird looks from people who kept walking past me and double checking that yes, I am letting them cut me, and no, the drop tower is not broken, I just really want to watch this cartoon. So next time you're in Islands of Adventure and you haven't watched this pre-show to its fullest, I highly recommend you checking it out, because it is just absolutely so fun and pure comic book goodness. And with that, let's move on to number 2 on our list. Moving on to the next attraction on our list, we're going to be going over to the newly opened Epic Universe, specifically the Super Nintendo World section of Epic Universe. Now, I might be cheating a bit by putting Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge on this list, as I think most people tend to enjoy this attraction a lot, given that it has a pretty consistent high wait time at both Universal Florida and Universal California. However, this list isn't necessarily attractions that I think are underrated. It is a list of attractions that I think have better queues than they do rides, and quite frankly, I just don't enjoy the ride aspect of this attraction all that much. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm a bit of a curmudgeon, but I find the VR aspect of this attraction just very obtrusive, it's not very engaging, and it doesn't look very good to me. Honestly, treating this attraction more like a Mario Kart dark ride and just not wearing the glasses in general probably would be a lot more enjoyable, even if it is still a bit bare bones and basics if you do that. However, I don't want my negativity to detract from the fact that this queue is extremely solid. Super Nintendo World in general does a fantastic job adapting its various characters and props from the video games into real life pretty one-to-one, and all of that is on full display in Bowser's Challenge. I'm a big fan of this giant Bowser statue that you see right when you walk in, as well as a bunch of other props that you see. For example, these Mario Kart trophies are very fun to look at. I like this little diorama of a Mario level that you see as you're walking through. And at the very end, right before you're in the final waiting room, you see these Mii costumes with a bunch of character-specific props that are right within arm's length of you. It's really cool to look at. On top of that, this queue is just absolutely teeming with life. I love how the screens are implemented in this queue to see all these various enemies bouncing around, living their lives. You get to see the boos sink in and out of various objects and haunt various aspects of the queue. You get to see the Podoboos going through the fireplace in this big furnace room. It's all very cool to see. I don't necessarily know if it's worth waiting the full 55 minutes to just see this queue alone. However, I wouldn't necessarily put it past myself to do that if I haven't gone on it in a while. It is just so fun to see all of this. This queue in general reminds me a lot of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I don't necessarily know what it is, but just the layout of the rooms is very similar, and that's also one of my favorite queues in Disneyland. So I think there's a reason that I like it so much here as well. But that's all I really have to say about Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge. It's a very fun queue, not necessarily my favorite ride, but let's move on to the last attraction on our list. As you may have guessed, the last attraction on our list is in Universal Studios Florida. Well, I suppose all these have been in Universal Studios Florida, but this is in Universal Studios Florida, the theme park. Well, I guess that doesn't necessarily narrow it down, but you know what I mean, the first one. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that there are some attractions on this list that I just straight up did not know existed before going on my trip, and this is the first one of those that I ran into. I was walking to the Mummy and caught this attraction out of the corner of my eye. I immediately whipped my body around and did one of those cartoon eyeball rubbing motions to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. But yes, to my bewilderment, Jimmy Fallon: A Race Through New York is a real, actual theme park attraction you can go to at Universal Studios. What an absolutely insane thing to base a theme park ride on. Now, I'm not really much of a talk show person. I don't watch a lot of them, and I especially don't watch The Tonight Show. Nothing against Jimmy Fallon, it's just not really my interest. However, seeing this in Universal Studios when all the other rides are based on various IPs and movies and TV shows, I just had to check it out. And I can't believe I'm saying this, and I swear I'm not exaggerating. A Race Through New York starring Jimmy Fallon might have one of my favorite queues in any theme park I've ever gone to. At the very least, I know it's definitely my favorite of any Universal park I've gone to, which is a decently high bar. I really like the queue for things like E.T. or the Harry Potter rides. However, as I'll get into, this attraction has a lot going on in its queue. Starting off on the first floor of Jimmy Fallon the Ride, you enter a bit of a Tonight Show museum exhibit. This area has sections dedicated to all the previous Tonight Show hosts, all with their own plaques and TVs showing their best moments. It's a perfectly fine area for a queue of a theme park. It definitely gives me a bit of context as to why I should care about The Tonight Show, which, before going into the ride, I had zero vested interest in. And honestly, that's what any good queue should do. I didn't have any interest in what this ride was about before going in, and because of this little area here, now I care at least a little bit. Perfectly good. However, it's not this first floor that makes Jimmy Fallon the Ride one of my favorite queues I've ever waited in a theme park, as it's the second floor where you really start to see what makes this area shine. First of all, this second floor has something that I think any queue in any theme park would be instantly upgraded by if they had access to it, which is a little lounge you get to chill in while you wait to be called to wait in line. You see, Jimmy Fallon the Ride doesn't have a traditional line system. Instead, when you enter the attraction, you're given a colored card, and each group gets called to go enter the attraction. So instead of slowly shuffling in line, eventually waiting to go ride the ride, you get to chill and experience this little lounge area. And this lounge area has plenty to do. First of all, there's a bunch of places to sit if you want to just relax and catch your breath for a moment. There's also various tables with fun little games you can play. These games are admittedly pretty simple. There's something very akin to a game you would see paired with a Family Guy Funny Moments compilation on TikTok, but they're fun enough time wasters. However, the real main attraction of this queue is this stage up front, as that's where you get to see what makes this queue special and stand out amongst all the others. A lot of the time, this stage is going to be playing various highlights from Jimmy Fallon's talk show, which on its own is fine enough. I haven't watched a lot of Jimmy Fallon's stuff, so I was surprised to find that I thought a lot of these singular moments were quite funny. I think he works very well in short form. But if you wait long enough, periodically there are two different events that might happen. First of all, occasionally while you're waiting, you might have this panda come out and do a little dance. This is hashtag the panda, which I assume is a mascot of some kind for Jimmy Fallon. I don't really know. What's awesome about this is not only do you get to see a little dance by this guy in a costume, but afterwards the panda comes down and does a little meet and greet. You can go take a picture with hashtag the panda while you're waiting in line. This is just so incredibly cool to me. The idea that you get a meet and greet with a costume character while you're waiting in line in an area that's already meant to relax and not have to worry about the line experience is just so cool. And the fun doesn't stop there, because on top of the occasional meet and greet, there's also a barbershop quartet that periodically comes out and does an entire live musical show right in front of your eyes. I didn't get to see the quartet much when I was on my trip, however, when I found footage online of it, I found that this live show, this musical performance, is 12 minutes long. That is absolutely insane. The show itself is pretty simple. It's a bit of a medley of various rap songs through the years, sung in the barbershop quartet style. It's super charming, and I can't believe that this is part of just the Q experience.
DJ, would you kindly drop that beat?
This speech is my recital. I think it's very vital to rock. All right, that's right, all time. It's tricky, tricky, tricky. Here we go. It's tricky to rock, all right, to rock, all right. That's right, on time. It's tricky. How is it, boys? Tricky, 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 tricky.
This is something that you can just see while you're waiting in line. I don't really know another theme park that has both a live show and a meet and greet you get to experience while you're just waiting for an attraction. It's absolutely insane to me. This meet and greet and live show really cemented Jimmy Fallon the Ride as being one of my favorite queues in any theme park I've gone to. However, there is still one more trick up its sleeve. After your group is called, you enter a much more traditional line system where you're in a hallway with various TVs playing more of Jimmy Fallon's best moments. And when you enter the final room before the actual ride itself, you have to watch a pre-show with Jimmy Fallon and the Roots. Normally, you would expect a pretty traditional safety spiel, hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the car at all times, that sort of a thing. However, this pre-show is a little different. Instead, Jimmy Fallon and the Roots do a whole musical number and instead rap to you the safety spiel.
If you're pregnant or your blood pressure's abnormal, I'm sorry, this simply isn't a suitable ride for you. Other people were unable to allow remission and over various back, neck, or heart conditions.
This is just incredibly charming. It's so fun. This queue just keeps on giving and giving. It's just so packed full of things to experience. I love it. Now, given the fact that I've spent a very long time praising the queue of Jimmy Fallon the Ride, you might expect this to be one of my favorite rides at Universal, and, no. I was very hyped going into Jimmy Fallon after experiencing all of the wonders of the queue, after being mesmerized by all these things, only to find out that the ride is just Star Tours. Now, I know a lot of rides at Universal Studios can be summarized as, quote, just Star Tours, but this one specifically really didn't latch on to me, as it's just a lot of nonsense that I have no idea what's going on at any moment in time. I imagine that a lot of what's happening in this attraction is meant to be inside jokes and various bits that Jimmy does on his talk show. I don't really know any of this. They really seem to like this Sarah bit with Sarah and her dad Gary, and I just don't find it funny at all. We go to the moon at some point, which I don't know if that's a Jimmy Fallon thing or if they just wanted to go as big and crazy as possible. Regardless, this ride did not do it for me. Honestly, the juxtaposition between how much I love the waiting area for this and how much I don't like the actual ride itself is kind of preposterous. So, if you ever need some time to kill and want an area to just be able to chill in and not have to worry on your Universal trip, maybe check out Jimmy Fallon The Ride. There's a whole lounge area you just get to chill in, maybe experience a live show, maybe get a selfie with hashtag the panda. Heck, you don't even have to ride the ride. You can just go up there, chill, and then leave. But that's about all I got, both for Jimmy Fallon The Ride and this list in general. I like queues more than the average bear, if it wasn't apparent, and I hope I was able to shed some light on some queues that maybe you weren't as familiar with, ones that are very easy to breeze through. I hope you enjoyed this list, and if there's any queues that you feel like I missed or want me to talk about in the future, please tell me in the comments below. But other than that, I've been Tuesday the 3rd. You can find me on Tuesday the 3rd in most places, and that's all I got. Have a great day.